is more of an old school center, doesn't shoot threes, doesn't really expand the doesn't really work around the perimeter, or Al-Farouq Aminu, who is more of a modern day power forward for the Blazers.
So the thing that Portland does do have Zach Collins, so you don't obviously you're not going to play Zach Collins and Nurkic out there together, right?
Yes.
And if you do want to, have help Collins develop, well, it'd be nice to see Nurkic go, but obviously Portland Trailblazers re-signed Nurkic, right? The year they traded for him, not this year, but the year in the past, he really did improve once he started playing. Once he actually started to care a little bit, he really did improve the team. So I think he's the more talented player than Aminu. But I can see an argument for keeping Aminu just because of his versatility and his skill set is more practical in today's modern NBA.
Yeah, so I would probably suggest keeping Aminu in this situation because of the fact that the Blazers are trying to win, and if they really are stuck on developing Zach Collins, then you might as well let Nurkic walk, and he probably will be selected, so you will be letting him walk.
Yeah, which is okay. Now we're going to move on to the Utah Jazz. This is an interesting one just because they have two real good players, but then they have a lot of really good role players that they wouldn't want to miss. The two obvious ones that I'm going to protect in this would be Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. And the third person I would also protect is Joe Ingles, just because of he really is able to do a lot for the team.
Yeah, he is really their glue guy. So other players available here are, you have Ricky Rubio, Dante Exum, who they just re-signed. They just selected Grayson Allen, but I don't think he'll be protected. And Jay Crowder, who they did trade for at the deadline. So I'm going to say we either select between Jay Crowder and Ricky Rubio to keep one of them. And pretty much, as valuable as Jay Crowder may have been for the Celtics, he did not have the best year last year. Ricky Rubio was a very solid point guard for the Jazz. And I think every team needs a point guard to really run that offense. So I will suggest keeping Ricky Rubio over Jay Crowder.
I will agree with you there. I think Ricky Rubio actually fit really well with the system in Utah. You could have seen in the playoffs once he got injured, the team was a little bit worse. So I would say Ricky Rubio is the guy to protect here just because he is a point guard who really knows how to lead an offense, and he's really good at it. Jay Crowder is a decent 3-and-D player, but I think Rubio is just the one that's more worth protecting. And if I'm an expansion team and I see Ricky Rubio's name out there, I take him to be my starting point guard any day.
Yeah, so it's pretty obvious, that he fits a little better with the team than Jay Crowder. Is a little more valuable to the team than Jay Crowder is.
Yes.
Even with Exum there, making
and Exum
$11 million.
Obviously more of a defensive guy. So I'm sure their plan is to have both playing. Now we're going to move over to Denver. You're obviously going to protect Jokic. You're going to protect Murray, and I would also protect Gary Harris just because he's a really successful and young 3-and-D guy right now.
Yeah, so you're left with Millsap and Barton. Obviously, Barton's the younger player. They did just resign Barton to a nice contract. However, Millsap is a former All-Star, very valuable to the team. Did not play as much as he'd like to last season, but hopefully those health concerns are over. And if Denver really does want to make the playoffs, does really want to grow as a team, I think having to keep Millsap is pretty essential to them making the playoffs this upcoming year, as much as they would miss Will Barton on their roster. So probably keeping Millsap would be a little more realistic for the Nuggets this upcoming year.
Yeah, Millsap is obviously, in my opinion, would be obviously the fourth choice here, just because you have a good team, and he's a real good defender. He's probably, after Draymond Green, he's the best player who could defend the four, and he could defend multiple positions. He's a good guy to have in the locker room. So I think you have to protect Millsap, and if I'm an expansion team, if I see Millsap out there, he's on my team for sure. Okay, so we have three more Western Conference teams to discuss. Minnesota, you're obviously going to protect Karl Anthony Towns. You still, even though Jimmy Butler is disgruntled and he he's on a 1 year. He's got 1 year left on his contract. You want to protect him. You want to try to salvage that relationship and make sure he's on your team. And then I would also protect Teague just because he's your point guard. He can score 16, 17 points. He dishes out some assists. So you still have to protect him, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think in this situation, especially taking Minnesota's roster into consideration, you could protect either Taj Gibson, Tyus Jones. But I think it's pretty, even though a lot of people are pretty, don't like Andrew Wiggins' contract, I think at this point you got to keep him. I mean, if anything, he still is a pretty valuable trade chip. There would be at least a handful of teams willing to take a risk and taking on Andrew Wiggins on their team if Minnesota does decide to move on from him. So I think similar to Jimmy Butler too, even though he is disgruntled, he probably does leave if he is still on the roster after this year. Taking into consideration his trade value, even though it might not be extremely high, just taking that into consideration is something that makes him worth keeping on the roster and worth protecting.
I mean, he's the obvious choice here. I think if you're a really smart GM, you actually put his name out there and you just let him go. But, I mean, of course, Minnesota's going to keep him, and I have no problems with that there. Then we have Memphis, who we are under the impression they're going to keep trying to win. So they're going to keep Gasol and Conley. And the last player they're going to protect is this year's fourth pick in the draft, which is Jaren Jackson, that everyone's very high about after his performance during Summer League.
So that just leaves essentially Kyle Anderson and JaMychal Green to be protected. And, I mean, as much as I think they did like JaMychal Green, he was pretty quiet this year. Kyle Anderson is someone that they did give a 4-year contract worth about $33 million. So I think at this point they probably would protect him over Green.
Yeah, I mean, I think just because of his, you have him for the next 4 years, you're certain of that. I think JaMychal Green is going to be a free agent this year. So yeah, I think Kyle Anderson's the man to protect there. Then the last Western Conference team we're going to discuss is the New Orleans Pelicans. We have, obviously, you're going to protect Anthony Davis. You're going to protect Drew Holiday and Mirotic if I am the Pelicans.
Yeah, and I think the fourth option is E'Twaun Moore, who really, had a very good, solid season for them this past year. Played almost the full season. He made about 2 3-pointers a game for them at a very high clip. It was, I think, about 43%. So he really did have somewhat of a breakout year for them this past season. And really taking the rest of the roster into consideration, there's not much else there that you would really salivate over keeping. So I think E'Twaun Moore is the obvious choice here to be kept on the roster.
Yeah, and especially since they don't have any more great players that anyone's going to be really trying to get. I did make a mistake. We have one more Western Conference team to discuss, and it's the Thunder. You're going to obviously protect Paul George, Russell Westbrook, and Steven Adams. I think those three are pretty clear.
And then you have essentially an option between keeping their new arrival, Dennis Schroeder, or Andre Robertson. And I think as talented as Schroeder is, I think Andre Robertson is more valuable to that roster than Dennis Schroeder. I think Dennis Schroeder is a poor fit with the Thunder in general, but apparently they see something in this pairing that we don't. So we'll see how that works out. But I think if you have a choice between those two and you're the Thunder with Westbrook on your team, I think it's pretty obvious you keep Robertson over Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, I do think, we obviously saw the impact of when Robertson was gone this year. So he's obviously very important to the team. I kind of disagree with you. I actually like the fit with Schroeder, especially if he's coming off the bench. But he also has, 3 more years on his contract, over $15 million. And, OKC is going to be in the luxury tax, no matter what, because of the contracts they gave Westbrook, Paul, and Adams. So, losing Schroeder wouldn't be necessarily the worst thing. All you gave up for it was a heavily protected pick. in 4 years, and
You gave up Carmelo, yeah, but I mean,
terrible contract. So losing him isn't the worst thing.
I'm pretty sure they would actually be kind of happy to lose that money in the future. As much as they seem to want him on that roster, I think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for them to lose that money because that would save them a ton in luxury cash.
Yeah. All right, now we're going to move on to the East. We're going to start with the Chicago Bulls. You drafted Wendell Carter this year. He, from all reports, everyone was raving about his game during summer league. You're going to keep Lauri Markkanen because we know what he can give you. And then I kind of had a difficulty coming up with this third guy, but I think Jabari is the third person to pick just because I like him over LaVine. I don't like LaVine very much, but Parker's the person to protect there, in my opinion. I can be persuaded otherwise.
No, I agree. I think Parker's got the most potential out of him, LaVine, and out of Parker, LaVine, and Dunn. I think Parker's got the most potential. You have to keep him. Both LaVine and Dunn were injured too at some point over the last 2 years and missed a significant amount of time. So really, I think so. Parker, I agree with, and then it's between LaVine and Dunn, and I don't know. Both players, you're not as high on LaVine. I'm not that high on LaVine, but I think he's a solid player. I would probably keep LaVine in the situation. He just because of the fact that he's got a little more potential than Chris Dunn does. Chris Dunn is probably going to be a solid NBA starter, but I don't ever see him being a superstar. And I don't see LaVine being a superstar either, but he's got a little more potential to be an all-star at some point. So.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit overstating it, but I would keep Dunn just because I can lose LaVine's contract. But I understand your point, and I do believe that the Bulls see more in LaVine than I do, and they gave him that contract, so they would want to keep him.
Yes.
All right, and then we're going to move on to Milwaukee. You're obviously going to protect Giannis. You're going to protect Chris Middleton. And then the third player I put down would be Eric Bledsoe.
So we're left with either Thon Maker or Malcolm Brogdon in this situation. So we kind of had a debate between the two of us when we were selecting. When we were reviewing who we should be protected between Bledsoe and Brogdon. And I just think Bledsoe's more of a better talent than Brogdon, even though Brogdon's a little younger. Both are free agents next year. Bledsoe will probably make a little more money than Brogdon. So we decided to go with Bledsoe in this situation. Now with Macher and Brogdon, I will suggest probably keeping Macher on the roster because of his potential, his two-way potential, because of the fact that he's a big man and they really have no big man there. Who do you think? This is pretty debatable.
To me, Thon Maker has only showed us he can perform, in one round of the playoffs, and then other than that, he hasn't done much else. I like Malcolm Brogdon. If I was Milwaukee, I would, the way I'm looking at it is I could see Bledsoe going, and I would want to keep Brogdon, who's going to be a restricted free agent.
Brogdon will, I believe, be a restricted free agent. He was, I'm not sure. I believe he was a second-round pick. I'm pretty sure he'll be a restricted free agent.
So I think you could at least keep Brogdon. But if you want to put down Maker...
Let's put on Brogdon. I'm okay with being persuaded in this situation. Brogdon had to be a second-round pick because this will only be his third year in the NBA, and standard rookie contract is 4 years. So he was not a first-round pick. He was a second-round pick.
Okay, toughest team. The team that's going to lose the most here would be the Boston Celtics. The way I see it is you have to protect Jason Tatum and you have to protect Jaylen Brown just because of how young they are and their development so far. And then the third person I would protect, and this took me a lot, but I think Al Horford's the person to protect just because we've seen how much he means to the team in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and then I think, obviously it's between, you have Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving, and even though Hayward is on a longer contract, I think it's you have to take that flyer with Kyrie Irving, and you have to keep him in this situation. You cannot let, a 26-year-old all-star point guard go for nothing. And in terms of, if they want to win, I think Irving has to be there. So as much as it would suck letting Hayward go, I think